A Werewolf in My Backyard, Chapter 1. The First Howl. The first time I heard it, I told myself it was nothing more than a dog. A stray, perhaps, lost in the woods that bordered the back of my house. That explanation made sense. It was simple, rational, and comforting. Three things I desperately needed in that moment. But deep down, I already knew the truth. That sound had been wrong. Too long, too guttural, too ancient to belong to anything so mundane as a dog. The night it began, the moon was already heavy in the sky, a swollen disk of pale silver that seemed to press down on the treetops. My backyard was small, fenced in by weathered planks of cedar, but beyond that fence stretched the forest, a thick, sprawling labyrinth of oaks and pines that had stood long before my house, long before the road, long before the town itself. In the daylight it was beautiful, a patch of green serenity where birds sang and deer sometimes wandered. But at night, when the shadows crowded close and the moonlight caught the pale bark of the birches, it became something else entirely. A place of whispers, a place where the old stories felt alive. That evening had been ordinary, or at least it had started that way. I'd been watering the garden, a few tomato plants and herbs I kept in raised beds along the back fence. My dog, Thor, patted around me with his usual energy, nose to the ground, tail swishing happily. He was a German shepherd, broad-chested, strong, loyal to the point of obsession. Normally, nothing rattled him. He'd bark at squirrels, sure, but he faced down the mailman, fireworks, even a rattlesnake once without flinching. But that night was different. He froze halfway across the yard, hackles lifting like a wave rolling across his back. His ears pricked forward, nose raised, chest rumbling with a growl I had rarely heard from him. A serious growl, low and steady, not the playful sound he made when tugging on a rope toy. This was the kind of sound that made the hair on my own arms stand on end. I followed his gaze to the tree line. Nothing, just a wall of black trunks, branches swaying in the faint wind. The cicadas had gone quiet, I realized. So had the frogs in the ditch down the road. The silence was thick enough to feel. "Thor," I called softly. "Come here, boy." He didn't move. His body was rigid, one paw lifted as if frozen mid-step. The growl deepened, then cut off suddenly, replaced by a sharp whine. He backed toward me, tail between his legs, eyes still fixed on the woods. That was when the smell hit me. It rolled over the fence like invisible smoke. Wet fur, coppery blood, and something else, something rotten. My stomach turned. The air seemed heavier, harder to breathe, as though the forest had exhaled some ancient stench that had been trapped within it for centuries. Probably a deer carcass, I whispered to myself. Saying it aloud made it feel almost plausible. But Thor didn't buy it. His whining turned into barking, frantic, explosive barks that shattered the stillness and echoed through the trees. He lunged at the fence as though trying to drive something back, to warn it away. And then it came. The howl. I have tried since then to describe it, to put into words what I heard that night. But every attempt feels hollow, like trying to describe the face of a nightmare that slips away with the dawn. It was not a wolf's howl, though it carried that long, rising wail. It was deeper, wetter, as though dragged through a throat too large, too wrong. It vibrated in my chest, set my teeth on edge, and filled my bones with ice. There was hunger in it, yes, but more than that, there was grief, rage, a mourning cry twisted into something predatory. Thor yelped and backed into me, trembling. For the first time in his life, he tried to press himself between my legs, like a puppy hiding from thunder. The howl faded, but the silence that followed was worse. The air seemed to lean in, listening, waiting for me to move. I didn't. I couldn't. I stood rooted to the spot until my lungs screamed for air and my heart hammered loud enough to drown out thought. When I finally managed to grab Thor's collar and pull him inside, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys trying to lock the back door. Inside, the house felt too small, too fragile. Every window was just thin glass between me and whatever had made that sound. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times, then sat in the dark living room with only Thor for company. He paced back and forth, whining, ears swiveling toward every creak of the settling wood. The howl came again, later that night, closer. This time, there was no mistaking it. Something was out there in the woods behind my house. Something alive. Something huge. And it knew exactly where I lived. Chapter 2. Scratches on the Fence. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the second howl faded into silence, I remained wide awake, staring at the ceiling, ears straining for the slightest sound. Thor lay pressed against the side of my bed, his body tense, paws twitching now and then as though chasing nightmares. Every so often he would lift his head, growl at the window, then settle back down with a low whine. By the time dawn crept into the sky, painting it with pale pink light, I felt as though I had aged years. My body ached with fatigue, but my mind was sharper than ever, focused on one fact. Something had been out there, and I needed to know what. The morning felt almost normal. Birds returned to the branches, chirping brightly as though mocking the dread that still clung to me. The forest behind the fence looked calm, dew sparkling on the leaves. For a brief moment, I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that maybe it really had been a stray dog. Maybe the howl had been warped by the wind, stretched into something unnatural only because I had been half asleep and jumpy. But then I went outside. Thor stayed behind me, hesitant, ears pricked. His tail wagged nervously, but he didn't run to sniff the grass the way he usually did. Instead, he hovered close to my leg, his body brushing mine with every step. The smell hit first. It was faint now, softened by the cool morning air, but it was still there. Wet fur, blood, and rot. I swallowed hard and forced myself toward the fence. That was when I saw them. Scratches. Long, deep gouges cut into the wood, starting low and dragging upward. Some marks were shallow, splinters curling away like paper shavings, but others were carved so deep that I could slide my finger into them. The cedar boards had held up against storms and years of weather, but whatever had clawed them had torn into the wood, as though it were nothing more than soft clay. My stomach tightened. Wolves didn't scratch fences like this. Bears, maybe, but the pattern was wrong. The marks were too deliberate, too human. 4 deep grooves and then a smaller one just offset, like the thumb of a hand. I backed away without realizing it, my shoes crunching in the gravel. Thor growled low, his teeth bared. His gaze followed something beyond the fence, something I couldn't see. "Hello?" My voice cracked. I don't know why I said it. Habit, maybe. The absurd instinct to treat the situation as though there might be a rational explanation, that someone could answer back. Of course, nothing did. The forest gave me no reply, just silence. But the feeling didn't leave. I wasn't alone. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I worked from home, half-heartedly typing reports while my mind replayed the sound of that howl, the sight of those scratches. I kept glancing at the backyard through the blinds, expecting to see movement, a shadow, a pair of eyes glinting from the trees. By afternoon, I decided I couldn't sit and wonder. I needed proof, evidence, something solid to anchor my fear to. So I grabbed my phone, a flashlight, and a notepad, and headed into the woods. Thor followed reluctantly, his paws dragging, ears flat against his head. Normally, he loved the forest, bounding ahead to sniff every tree and chase squirrels. Not today. Today, he stuck so close that I nearly tripped over him. The woods were darker than I remembered, even in daylight. The canopy was thick, blocking out the sun, and the air was damp with the smell of moss and old earth. Every step seemed too loud. Branches snapped underfoot like breaking bones. I found more signs almost immediately. Broken branches, bent low as though something massive had shoved its way through. Patches of disturbed soil, claw marks in the bark of an oak. And once, God help me, I found hair. Coarse, dark strands tangled in the splinters of a snapped branch. I collected some, wrapping them carefully in a tissue. They were longer than dog hair, thicker, almost bristly like a boar's. But the color, dark, almost black, didn't match anything I'd ever seen in these woods. Thor whimpered, and I followed his gaze. Just beyond the trees, the ground was torn up, dirt thrown aside in deep furrows. In the center of the disturbed earth was a track, a paw print. At least that's what it looked like at first. But the longer I stared, the less sense it made. The pad was too wide, the claws too long, and beneath the pads, faint but unmistakable, were impressions that looked eerily like toes. 5 of them. I staggered back, breath catching in my throat. The woods felt suddenly closer, pressing in on me from all sides. That was when the smell returned. Stronger this time. Musk and blood and decay. Thor barked sharply, hackles raised, and the forest answered. Not with a howl, not this time, but with movement. The underbrush rustled, heavy footsteps circling just out of sight. "Who's there?" I shouted, though my voice trembled. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight beam darting from tree to tree. Nothing. No eyes, no shadow, no shape among the trunks. Just that smell. Just that awful, suffocating smell. I left the woods in a hurry, Thor pulling at the leash so hard he nearly choked himself. Back home, I double-checked the scratches on the fence. They seemed deeper now, though I knew that was only in my mind. I spent the evening pacing, listening, waiting. That night, the howling returned. Louder, closer, and when I dared to look through the blinds, I saw it. A figure, huge, hunched, standing just beyond the fence. Its outline blurred by the darkness, but its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight like twin embers. I stumbled back from the window, heart slamming against my ribs. Thor barked wildly, throwing himself at the glass. And then, with a slow, deliberate scrape, claws dragged across the wood of the fence. The sound was high and shrill, cutting through the night like a scream. It wasn't trying to break in, not yet. It was letting me know it could, and that it was only a matter of time. Chapter 3, The Diary. Sleep abandoned me again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those glowing eyes staring back through the slats of the fence. Every creak of the house became claws on wood. Every gust of wind became that awful stench drifting through the night air. By dawn, I was hollowed out, more exhausted than I'd ever been, but too restless to stay in bed. The scratches on the fence still gleamed raw in the morning light, pale strips of cedar against the darker, weathered boards. Proof. Physical proof that this was real, that I wasn't dreaming, that something unnatural stalked the woods. I should have called the police, but what would I tell them? That a werewolf was harassing my property? That something half-man, half-beast had scraped its claws across my fence? They would laugh. They might even take me in for a psych evaluation. I needed to find my own answers. The problem was, I had no idea where to start until I remembered the attic. The house had belonged to my grandparents before me. When they passed, it went to my father, and when he passed, it became mine. I had lived in it for years without bothering to clean out the attic. Too many boxes, too many ghosts, and I had never been sentimental enough to go digging through the old family junk. But now, something gnawed at me, a memory half buried. I remembered being a child, hearing my grandmother warn me not to play outside during the full moon. She had spoken with such seriousness, such quiet fear, that even as a boy I had listened. At the time, I thought it was just one of those odd superstitions, like knocking on wood or tossing salt over your shoulder. But what if it wasn't? The thought propelled me up the narrow staircase to the attic. Dust filled the air as I pushed open the creaking door. The space smelled of mothballs and cedar, of old paper and forgotten years. Sunlight filtered through a small circular window, catching dust motes that swirled in the stale air. I began opening boxes at random. Photographs, letters, my father's tools, my grandmother's china, and then I found it. A trunk, heavy, iron-bound, its lock rusted shut. I dragged it into the light and pried at it until the brittle metal snapped. Inside were books, old leather-bound, their spines cracked with age. Some were in English, others in languages I didn't recognize. German, maybe, or something older. Beneath them, wrapped in a piece of yellowed cloth, was a diary. The cover was cracked leather, the pages fragile and browned with time. Written inside in my grandmother's looping hand were entries spanning decades. Most were mundane, notes about harvests, the weather, family matters. But as I flipped further, the tone shifted. August 17th, 1952. The howling has returned. I heard it last night beyond the trees. Your grandfather swore it was only a wolf, but I know better. The marks on the barn door are the same as before. I fear the curse still lingers in this bloodline. My breath caught. Curse? Bloodline? I read on. September 3rd, 1952. Your uncle saw it again near the well. He swore it looked like a man, hunched and twisted, with eyes like burning coal. He won't go near the woods anymore. Neither will I. I told the children never to play outside when the moon is full. I pray they listen. The entries grew darker. Tales of livestock found slaughtered, of neighbors disappearing, of strange tracks circling the property. My grandmother had written of whispers in the town, of old stories passed from mouth to mouth. Stories of a man long ago who had been bitten, who had hidden the sickness in his heart until it grew too strong. He became a beast under the moon, cursed to roam the woods in hunger and grief. My eyes skimmed faster, heart pounding. November 12th, 1963. It is in us. I know it now. The sickness is in the blood. My father spoke of it, though he called it madness. I see it in the eyes of the children when they grow angry, a shadow that does not belong. We must guard against it, always. I dropped the book into my lap, hands trembling. In us. The implication sank like a stone into my stomach. My family. My blood. I turned to Thor, who sat at the top of the attic stairs, whining softly, as though sensing the weight of what I'd just uncovered. The diary wasn't just a record of fear, it was a warning. That night, I couldn't bring myself to leave the book closed. I read page after page by the dim light of a lamp, my fingers tracing the faded ink. My grandmother had lived her entire life in the shadow of this curse, and if she was right, then so was I. The howls came again around midnight. This time, they were answered. Another voice rose in the distance, then another, weaving into a terrible chorus. My chest tightened as I realized the truth. It wasn't just one creature, there were more. Thor growled at the back door, pressing his nose against the glass, his breath fogging it. I followed his gaze and froze. In the moonlight, by the fence, a figure moved. Tall, broad, its shoulders hunched unnaturally. It turned its head toward me, and even from inside the house, I saw the gleam of its eyes. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. It is in us, and I couldn't shake the question that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Was it out there because of me? Chapter 4. The Hunter's Tale. The scratching at the fence didn't stop that night. It came in bursts, long, deliberate drags of claw and wood, each one setting my teeth on edge. Thor barked himself hoarse, pacing in circles by the window, but I couldn't bring myself to open the door, not when I knew what waited outside. By dawn, silence finally returned. I slumped into a chair, numb, the diary clutched in my lap. My grandmother had lived with this terror. She had written about neighbors disappearing, livestock slaughtered, and the sickness in our blood. And now it was circling me, testing my defenses. I was still sitting there staring blankly at the scratched-up fence when I heard the knock. It wasn't timid. 3 hard raps against the front door, sharp and deliberate. Thor lunged toward the sound, growling low. No one visited me out here. The neighbors were miles away and I hadn't spoken to them in months. My stomach turned as I crossed the living room, each step heavy. I opened the door. A man stood on the porch. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with a weathered face and a graying beard. His clothes were rugged, hunting jacket, heavy boots, a cap pulled low over his brow. Slung across his back was a rifle, and at his belt hung something far more unsettling, silver blades polished to a gleam. "You've seen it," he said flatly. His voice was gravel, low and certain. I swallowed. "What are you talking about?" His eyes narrowed, pale blue, cold as steel. "Don't waste my time. You've heard it, you've smelled it, and by now it's left its mark on your property. Don't tell me you haven't noticed." The words hit like a punch. My throat tightened. but I forced myself to stay composed. "Who are you?" He hesitated, then stepped past me into the house without asking permission. Thor bristled, barking furiously, but the man didn't flinch. He shut the door behind him, then turned with a grim smile. "Name's Harlan," he said. "I hunt the things that hunt us." I wanted to throw him out, to demand answers, to call the police, but I didn't. Something in his eyes and the hard lines of his face told me he was serious, more serious than anyone I had ever met. "How did you know?" I asked finally. He scanned the room, his gaze landing on the diary on the table. His expression shifted, recognition, maybe even respect. "Ah, you found the book. Then you already know this land is cursed." My chest tightened. "Cursed how?" Harlan sighed and lowered himself into a chair. His movements were slow, deliberate, the kind of weariness that came from carrying a burden for too many years. "Your family's bloodline has a history, old country before they came here. One of your ancestors made a mistake, crossed paths with something that should have been left alone. Since then, the sickness has followed the blood, generation after generation." I sat across from him, gripping the arms of my chair. "Are you saying it's inside me?" His eyes met mine unflinching. "Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes it skips, sometimes it waits. But mark my words, it knows its own. That thing outside, it's not just hunting this land, it's hunting you." The room spun. My grandmother's words echoed. "It is in us." The diary hadn't been paranoia, it had been a warning. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to breathe. "What do I do?" Harlan leaned forward, his voice a low growl. "You fight. You keep the beast out until we know for sure. You don't go into the woods at night. You don't answer when it calls. And if you feel it in yourself, if you feel the hunger, the pull of the moon, you tell me." I froze. "And then?" His jaw tightened. "Then I do what has to be done." His hand rested on the hilt of the silver blade at his side. Thor whined as though he understood. That evening, Harlan walked the perimeter of my property, studying the scratches on the fence, the disturbed soil by the trees. He muttered to himself, too quiet for me to hear, then finally turned back to me. "It's testing you," he said. "It wants you scared. Wants you weak. That's how it works. But it won't wait much longer. Next full moon, it'll come for real." I swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because blood calls to blood," he said simply. "It knows what you are, or what you could become." That night, Harlan stayed in the guest room with his rifle across his knees. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house amplified in the silence. Somewhere beyond the fence, the beast prowled. I could feel it. When the howls began again, Harlan didn't move. He just sat in the chair, eyes open, waiting. And I couldn't tell if I felt safer with him in the house or more terrified. Chapter 5, Blood in the Shadows. The night came heavy with silence. The kind of silence that presses on your ears until even your own heartbeat feels too loud. Harlan sat by the window, rifle resting across his lap, his pale eyes fixed on the tree line. Thor lay at his feet, restless, ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. I tried to sleep, but my body wouldn't allow it. My grandmother's diary lay open on the nightstand. The words seared into my mind. "It is in us." Harlan's warning echoed with every tick of the clock. Next full moon, it'll come for real. But the full moon wasn't for another 2 nights. So why did the air already taste of blood? It started with the animals. A scream split the air. High, piercing, guttural, not human. Thor shot upright, snarling, his teeth bared. Harlan was on his feet in an instant, throwing the window open. "Deer," he muttered, but his voice was tight, grim. Another scream cut short, then silence. I followed him out to the porch, the boards creaking under our weight. The night smelled different now, thicker, metallic. My stomach churned as I realized what it was. Fresh blood. Harlan lifted the rifle, scanning the dark yard. "Stay close." We edged along the fence line, flashlights cutting thin beams through the trees. And that's when I saw it. Movement. low and fast, something dragging. We rounded the corner and froze. There, by the far end of the fence, lay what was left of a deer. Its body was torn open, ribs cracked, flesh hanging in strips. Steam rose from the wounds in the cool night air. And crouched over it, shoulders hunched, was a figure. It wasn't wolf, it wasn't man, it was both. Its back arched grotesquely, muscles rippling beneath matted fur. Its arms were too long, ending in claws that sank deep into the deer's body. And its head, God, its head was wrong. Muzzle elongated, teeth glistening, eyes glowing that same unnatural yellow I had seen from my window. The beast turned toward us. The deer's blood coated its mouth, dripping in thick strings down its chest. It growled, a sound that was less animal, more nightmare. Thor barked furiously, lunging at the end of his leash, but Harlan didn't flinch. He raised the rifle. The shot cracked the night open. The creature shrieked, a horrible human-like cry, and leapt into the trees with impossible speed. Branches snapped, leaves scattered, and then it was gone. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Back inside, Harlan cleaned the rifle with slow, deliberate movements. His jaw was tight, his eyes harder than stone. "You saw it," he said finally. I sat across from him, still shaking. "What was it?" He looked up at me, unblinking. "You already know." My hands trembled. "That thing, it was feeding, tearing into it like an animal?" Harlan interrupted, voice sharp. "Don't fool yourself. That wasn't some beast. That was a man once. Maybe even someone you knew." The thought made bile rise in my throat. He leaned forward, voice dropping low. "And if your grandmother was right, it could be you next." The room tilted. I grabbed the arms of the chair to steady myself. Thor pressed close to me, whining softly, his body warm against my leg. "No," I whispered. "I'm not." But even as I said it, my skin crawled. My muscles ached. My chest felt too tight, like something inside me was straining to get out. Harlan's gaze bore into me. "Tell me the truth. Did you feel it?" I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. "Yes." The next day, I didn't leave the house, not even to feed the chickens. They were dead anyway. I found them at dawn, torn apart inside their coop, feathers scattered like snow. The fence bore fresh scratches, deeper this time, angrier. A message carved into wood. "You can't keep me out." I sat at the kitchen table staring at my trembling hands. The ache in my body hadn't gone away. Every sound outside made me jump. Every shadow felt alive. By afternoon, Harlan slammed a map down in front of me. Tracks lead into the woods. Too big to be natural. Too fresh to ignore. "We'll hunt it tonight." I stared at him, horrified. "Hunt it? Are you insane? You saw what it did to that deer." He fixed me with those cold blue eyes. "Better to face it out there than wait for it to come crashing through your door." Thor growled as though agreeing. I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was right. The beast was getting bolder. It wouldn't stop at animals. It wouldn't stop at fences. And worse, part of me didn't want it to. That night, the forest swallowed us whole. Harlan walked ahead, rifle steady, every step silent. I followed with Thor at my side, my flashlight jittering with the tremor in my hands. The woods smelled damp, earthy, but beneath it all was that same stench. Rot, musk, blood. The deeper we went, the stronger it grew. Then we found the body, a man, or what was left of one. His chest had been torn open, his throat ripped out, his face frozen in a scream he never finished. I staggered back, gagging, my light swinging wildly. "God! Oh God!" Harlan knelt, examining the corpse with clinical detachment. "Not long dead. We're close." Suddenly, the forest erupted. A howl tore through the trees so loud it rattled my bones. Thor barked, teeth bared, pulling at the leash. My flashlight beam caught eyes in the darkness. Two glowing orbs, moving fast. Harlan raised the rifle. "Run!" The thing exploded from the trees, all muscle and fury, and the night filled with blood. Chapter 6, Dreams of Fur and Teeth. I don't remember running. I don't remember how we made it back to the house after the beast lunged from the trees. What I do remember is the sound. The wet crunch of bone, the tearing of flesh, the screams echoing through the woods until they weren't human anymore. When the door slammed behind us, my lungs were on fire. Thor barked and clawed at the floorboards, frantic, his body trembling as though the terror lived in him too. Harlan bolted the windows and shoved a chair under the door handle, his face pale and grim. "Close call," he muttered. "Too close." I sank to the floor, clutching my chest, and that's when I realized it. My heartbeat wasn't steady. It thundered, erratic, each pulse a violent hammer against my ribs. My hands shook, my nails sharper than they had any right to be. My mouth tasted of copper, metallic and hot. When I touched my lips, my fingers came back smeared with blood. I didn't know if it was mine. That night I dreamed. I stood in the woods barefoot, the ground soft and wet beneath me. The moon hung swollen above the trees, its light silver and cruel. Thor barked somewhere in the distance, his voice sharp with fear, but I couldn't see him. Something moved in the shadows. I knew it before I saw it. The shape of the beast, the slope of its shoulders, the yellow glow of its eyes. It crept closer, muscles coiled, teeth bared. My breath caught, half in fear, half in anticipation. When it lunged, I didn't run. I met it halfway. Claws raked across my arms, hot and electric. My bones bent, snapped, reformed. The scream that ripped from my throat wasn't mine. It was a howl, long and wild, echoing through the trees. My hands split open into talons. My jaw cracked, teeth lengthened, skin tore. And God help me, it felt good. The power surged through me, pure and merciless. The forest bent to my voice. The earth itself seemed to recognize me. For one blinding, terrifying moment, I wasn't prey. I was predator. Then I woke, drenched in sweat, the echo of the howl still vibrating in my chest. Thor cowered in the corner, ears flat, eyes wide, as though he had seen me change. I didn't tell Harlan. When morning came, he asked if I had slept. I lied. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes sharp, searching. Then he only nodded and went back to sharpening his blades. But I knew he suspected. The rest of the day passed in a haze. My skin itched, burned, as though something was crawling beneath it. Food tasted wrong, too bland, too lifeless. I craved something else, something rich and warm and alive. Blood. The thought horrified me. I tried to shake it, but every time Thor's paw scraped against the floor, every time Harlan pricked his finger while testing a blade, the smell hit me like lightning. I wanted it. I needed it. By evening, I couldn't stand my own reflection. In the bathroom mirror, my eyes looked different. Not fully, not yet, but in the right light, I could swear they glowed. My jaw ached, my teeth sharper against my tongue. My hands clenched involuntarily, nails biting into skin until they drew blood. And when I leaned closer, the words from my grandmother's diary seemed to whisper from memory. It does not come from outside, it waits within. I smashed the mirror. That night, the dreams returned. This time, I wasn't alone in the woods. Harlan was there, standing rigid with his rifle, silver glinting in the moonlight. His eyes locked on me, not with suspicion, but with certainty. "You know what you are," he said. I shook my head, trembling. "No, I'm not." Before I could finish, pain tore through me. My back arched, ribs splitting, skin stretching. Harlan didn't move. He only raised the rifle, barrel steady, aimed at my heart. I tried to scream for him to stop, but all that came out was a howl. The gun fired. I woke gasping, clutching my chest, the phantom pain of the bullet burning through me. Thor whined softly, pressing his body against mine. His warmth was the only thing that kept me tethered to myself. But the truth was already seeping in. I wasn't just being hunted, I was changing, and soon, I wouldn't know the difference between me and the thing in the woods. Chapter 7. The Silver Trap. By the third night, the forest felt wrong. Not just dangerous, wrong. The silence pressed heavier, the shadows darker, the air thicker. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something inevitable. Harlan worked in silence, his hands steady as he set each trap. Silver spikes, snares lined with wire. even crude cages reinforced with steel. I watched him from the porch, my pulse hammering because I couldn't shake the thought. These traps weren't just meant for the beast. They were meant for me. "Hold this!" He shoved a coil of wire into my hands. It felt heavy, cold. I obeyed, though every instinct screamed at me to drop it and run. He crouched, driving a stake deep into the soil, his breath fogging in the chill. "You ever hunt before?" he asked without looking up. "No," my voice cracked. Not like this." Harlan tightened the knot, then finally glanced at me. His eyes lingered too long. "You will." The words chilled me more than the night air. Thor whined behind us, pulling against the rope that kept him tied to the porch. He wanted no part of this hunt. Smart dog. As darkness fell, Harlan loaded the rifle with silver bullets. Each one clicked into place like a countdown to something final. I sat by the fire, unable to eat, unable to rest. My skin burned. My teeth ached. The hunger gnawed at me, deeper now, more insistent. Every pop of the fire smelled like roasting flesh. "Drink," Harlan said, sliding a tin cup toward me. I raised it to my lips but stopped. The water shimmered strangely in the firelight. My stomach twisted. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer, just stared, waiting. I set the cup down. My hands trembled. "You don't trust me." Harlan leaned forward, voice low and sharp. "I've seen it happen. I know the signs. You're sweating when the night's cold. You flinch at the smell of blood. You wake with eyes too wild to be human." My breath caught. "You think it's me?" "I don't think." His hand rested on the rifle. "I know." For a moment, all I could hear was the fire crackling between us. Thor growled softly, sensing the charge in the air. Finally, I whispered, "Then why haven't you killed me?" Harlan's gaze didn't waver. "Because you're still you. For now. But when the moon's full, if you change..." He tapped the rifle. The sound was louder than the crack of thunder. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps, every gust of wind like a howl. When I did close my eyes, the dream swallowed me. Teeth, fur, the taste of blood, and always, always the silver bullet burning in my chest. I woke one night to the sound of chains. Harlan was in the barn, hammering, welding, preparing something. I crept close, careful not to let the boards creak. Through a crack in the wood, I saw it. A cage, large, reinforced, chains dangling like iron snakes. For the beast, for me. My hands shook so hard I had to press them against my chest to keep still. A part of me wanted to confront him, to scream. Another part, the darker part, wanted to step inside that cage before the change came, before I hurt anyone else. But the hunger, God, the hunger was stronger. The full moon was tomorrow. That night, the forest erupted with screams. Not animal this time, human. Harlan grabbed his rifle, already moving. "Stay inside," he barked. I should have listened. I should have locked the door, hidden under the bed. Anything but what I did next. I followed. The trees closed in around me, shadows twisting, branches clawing. The screams grew louder, raw, ragged, cut short. Blood filled the air, sharp and sweet, making my mouth water. Then I saw it, a man, or what was left of him, dragged across the dirt, his body limp, his blood painting the leaves. And towering over him, the beast, fur bristling, claws dripping, eyes glowing like lanterns in the night. It looked up, and for a heartbeat, I saw myself in its face. The same hunger, the same eyes. "No," I whispered. "No!" The creature snarled and lunged. Harlan's rifle cracked, silver flashing. The beast shrieked, thrashing, then vanished into the trees. The body lay still. Harlan turned, his eyes locking on me. His rifle rose just slightly, and for the first time, I wondered if I was more dangerous than the thing he was hunting. Chapter 8. The Moonlit Pact. The full moon rose like a blade, sharp and merciless. Every breath I took burned. My skin crawled, stretched, begged to tear. My veins pulsed like they were full of fire instead of blood. Harlan sat across from me, the rifle never more than an arm's reach away. Thor lay at my feet, trembling, his eyes locked on me with fear I couldn't bear to name. The silence was unbearable. Finally, Harlan spoke. "It's time." I shook my head, clutching the table, as though I could anchor myself there, in that moment, in that fragile sliver of humanity. "I can fight it." He leaned closer, voice low and steady. "No one fights it. You don't bargain with the moon. You don't outrun the blood. You either chain it or you kill it." The words hung between us like smoke. And then the first crack split my ribs. I doubled over, gasping, my hands clawing the wood. My bones shifted, snapping like branches. Nails lengthened into claws. My teeth ached, stretching into fangs. Thor barked wildly, straining against the rope, as if he could pull me back from the edge. Harlan moved fast. Chains rattled. Cold iron closed around my wrists. He dragged me toward the barn, toward the cage I had spied on nights before. I fought, not against him, but against myself. "Don't let me out," I begged, my voice already warping, breaking. "No matter what I say, don't." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pity? Regret? Maybe both. Then he locked the cage. The door slammed shut. The chains ripped through me, brutal, merciless. Flesh split, fur burst forth, my body folding and unfolding in ways it was never meant to. I screamed until the scream became a howl that shook the rafters. When the haze cleared, I was on all fours. My claws scraped steel. My jaws gnashed against the bars. My breath steamed the air. And across from me, Harlan stood with the rifle leveled at my chest. One silver bullet would end it. He didn't fire. "Do you hear me in there?" he asked, voice raw. "Is it still you?" The beast snarled, but somewhere inside I nodded. Just barely. That was when he lowered the gun. The night stretched long, each minute a war. I threw myself against the cage, rattling the chains, hunger gnawing at me. The smell of Harlan's blood, his sweat, his fear, it was unbearable. But he didn't move, didn't run, didn't blink. He stayed, keeping his vigil. Hours passed. The moon burned overhead, and then footsteps. Not mine, not Harlan's, something else in the dark. The beast from the forest stepped into the doorway, its eyes glowing like twin embers. It snarled, teeth dripping. It was bigger than I remembered, stronger, its fur bristling silver beneath the moonlight. It hadn't come for prey, it had come for me. The cage rattled as I roared, fury and recognition twisting in my chest. Harlan raised his rifle, but the creature's gaze wasn't on him. It was locked on me. Father, brother, reflection. I didn't know which, but I knew it wanted me. The air between us was charged, thick with the weight of an unspoken truth. And then in the silence, words formed. Not with lips, but deep in my skull, vibrating like thunder. "You are mine," I froze. The beast stepped closer, claws scraping dirt, its growl shaking the walls. The bars groaned as I hurled myself against them, rage boiling through me. "No," I thought, or maybe I howled. "I am not yours." Harlan fired. The bullet tore through the air, grazing the beast's shoulder. It shrieked, furious, then lunged at the cage, its claws slamming against the bars inches from my face. The impact rattled the chains. The lock strained. I realized with horror, if the beast broke in, it wouldn't kill me. It would free me. And I didn't know if that was worse. The night ended in chaos, gunfire, howls, blood. The pact wasn't spoken, not with words, but with what we didn't do. Harlan didn't kill me. I didn't give in to the hunger, and the beast didn't stop hunting. When the first light of dawn bled through the cracks in the barn, I was human again. Bare, broken, bloody. Harlan looked at me, his face pale, his eyes heavy. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. We both knew the truth. The forest wasn't big enough for two monsters. Chapter 9, The Transformation. Dawn brought no peace. The chains hung loose around my wrists, slick with blood. My body was human again, but wrong. Too raw, too hollow. My bones felt heavier, my skin too thin, my teeth aching for something they could not name. Harlan stood by the barn door, staring at me like a man stares at a grave he dug himself. His rifle dangled at his side, but the weight of his silence was heavier than any bullet. "You see now," he muttered at last. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream I'm still me, but the words caught in my throat because even I didn't believe them anymore. That night, the hunger didn't wait for the moon. It clawed at me in daylight, creeping into every thought. The smell of meat in the kitchen made my hands tremble. The sound of Thor lapping water made my mouth water. When I caught my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, I froze. Not my face, not fully. The eyes staring back at me were yellow, glowing faintly even in daylight. My lips curled without meaning to, baring teeth that were sharper, too sharp. I touched them and felt the sting of my own finger-breaking skin. Blood welled. I licked it clean, and it tasted good. By evening, Harlan chained me again, though this time I didn't fight. Part of me craved it, wanted the cold bite of iron to hold me back. "You're not safe loose," he said. I almost laughed. "Not safe for me or for you?" I didn't ask. As the sun bled into the horizon, a howl split the woods. The other beast, louder this time, closer. It wasn't hunting prey, it was calling me. Something deep in my chest answered before I could stop it. A low growl rose from my throat, rattling my teeth. Thor whimpered and pressed himself against the barn wall. Harlan's eyes flicked to me, wide with a fear he didn't bother to hide. "It's in you now," he whispered. "No cage will hold it forever." The moon climbed. This time I didn't collapse. I didn't scream. The change came smooth like slipping into water. My skin peeled away into fur, my spine arched, my jaw stretched. But it wasn't pain, it was release. I stood taller than before, claws sharper, senses sharper still. The world was alive. Every leaf, every heartbeat, every drop of blood humming like music in my skull. I turned toward Harlan. He aimed the rifle, hands steady, eyes trembling. "Don't," he said. "If you're still in there, don't." But I wasn't sure I was, because I didn't see Harlan. I saw prey. The lock groaned as I pushed. Chains snapped one by one. The cage door screeched open. Harlan fired. The bullet grazed my arm, searing fire through my flesh, silver burning worse than flame. I roared, not in pain, but rage. I lunged. He fired again. The shot missed. The rifle clattered as I swiped it away. And then Thor. He leapt between us, barking, teeth bared. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The beast inside me hesitated. I looked down at him, at the one creature who hadn't abandoned me, who hadn't loaded silver into a gun the moment I changed. Thor's eyes weren't afraid. They were pleading. And in that plea, something broke. The beast staggered. My claws shook. My breath came ragged, human again, just for a flicker. I stumbled back, retreating into the shadows of the barn, howling not at the moon, but at myself. When dawn came again, the chains lay shattered on the ground. Harlan didn't speak to me. Thor didn't come near. I wasn't in the cage anymore. I wasn't outside it either. I was something in between. And I realized with cold, perfect certainty, the transformation wasn't the night's curse anymore. It was permanent. I wasn't turning into a beast, I was the beast. Chapter 10, The Forest Calls. The forest was louder than ever. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of twig, every whisper of wind carried a message I could no longer ignore. It wasn't just noise, it was language, and I understood it. Come home. I sat on the porch that night, barefoot, staring at the tree line. Thor whined softly at my feet, but he didn't come closer. Even he could feel it. I didn't belong in the house anymore. I didn't belong in the world I had once called mine. Behind me, I heard Harlan moving. He had packed his things. His voice was low, weary. "I can't stay here. Not with you, not with this." I didn't argue. He left without another word, his truck's engine fading down the dirt road until only silence remained. And then it was just me, Thor, and the forest. That night, the moon rose swollen and white, painting the grass in silver. I didn't fight the change this time. I welcomed it. Bones shifted, skin tore, fur rippled across my flesh like wildfire. My senses bloomed open. The night was alive with scent and sound. Blood, soil, rain, fear, everything at once. Thor barked once, sharp and desperate, as though begging me to resist. But the call was too strong. The forest sang to me, every shadow a promise, every tree a doorway. I stepped off the porch, and with each step, I left the last scraps of my humanity behind. The woods embraced me. Branches scratched my fur, roots tangled beneath my claws, the earth itself pulling me deeper. The other howls rose to meet mine, weaving together in a chorus that rattled the stars. I wasn't alone. Dozens, maybe more, answered from the depths of the trees. Yellow eyes blinked open in the darkness, surrounding me, watching. Some snarled, some bowed their heads. All accepted me. And then I saw him again, the one who had stalked my yard, the beast that had marked me. His eyes glowed brighter than the rest. He stepped forward, massive, scarred, his breath a storm of rot and hunger. This time I didn't fear him. This time I stood beside him. The forest pulsed, alive with something older than blood, older than men, older even than the moon. I felt it in my marrow. This wasn't a curse, it was a return. I threw back my head and howled, the sound carrying far beyond the trees, rolling over the empty farmhouse, over the quiet road, over the world I no longer belonged to. Somewhere far behind me, Thor howled too, a broken, lonely sound. But I didn't turn back. The forest had called, and I had answered. No one in town saw me again, but on certain nights when the moon was full, when the wind turned sharp and cold, they whispered about the howls rising from the forest. Some said it was just wolves. Others said it was more. And those who listened long enough swore they could hear a voice in the howling, a voice that once had been human.